So in 1995, author Gregory Maguire decided to answer the question of what is wicked. At the time, he was an author that was best known for writing children's books, but Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, published in 1995, was his first step into adult fiction. So in addition to answering the question, what makes somebody wicked or what is wicked, this book also delves into religious drama, deconstruction, fascism, feminism, gay stuff, and lots of sick burns. So I hope you'll join me for the ride. I need to give some background on the inspiration for Wicked. The Wizard of Oz. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was a novel that was originally published by author L. Frank Baum in 1900. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was a major success, and it was soon followed by stage adaptations of this work. And then in 1904, L. Frank Baum published a sequel to The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and this would be followed by 4 more novels in that series that would be published between the years of 1907 and 1920. The 1920 novel actually was published posthumous Baum's death. In 1939, MGM released the most famous film adaptation of Baum's original novel, The Wizard of Oz, and it remains a pop cultural touchstone to this day. The Wizard of Oz is the story of a farm girl from Kansas named Dorothy Gale. One day, a tornado rips her house up and transports her and her dog Toto to a magical land called Oz, where she learns that her house has dropped on and killed a woman called the Wicked Witch of the East. That's not going to be traumatizing or anything for a child. The Good Witch of the North shows up and gives Dorothy the Wicked Witches of the East's magical shoes. Wanting to go home, Dorothy is directed by the Good Witch of the North to ask for help from the ruler of Oz, who is just a mysterious figure called the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy then goes on an adventure to meet this mysterious wizard and hopefully find her way home. On the way, she gathers a ragtag bunch of traveling companions, a scarecrow, a tin man, and a cowardly lion. Each of them wants something that they hope the wizard could give them. The scarecrow wants a brain, the tin man wants a heart, the cowardly lion wants courage. So they finally meet up with the wizard, and he tells the group he will grant their wishes for him if they kill the Wicked Witch of the West for him. They set out on yet another quest and are met with a variety of obstacles along the way. Dorothy then kills the Wicked Witch of the West when she throws a bucket of water on the woman and she melts. More trauma. The gang returns to the wizard with proof of the witch's death, but then it's revealed that the wizard is just some old dude from Omaha, Nebraska, who came to Oz via hot air balloon. After some back and forth discussion, he gives the other 3 companions their wishes with some, magician tricks.
Tricks are for kids.
He offers to take Dorothy home in his hot air balloon. The balloon is just about to take off when Toto hops out of the basket and Dorothy chases after him, and the balloon with the wizard in it leaves without them, making Dorothy very upset. The Good Witch of the North returns to tell Dorothy, oh, by the way, you got those shoes, you can just use those to return home. You could have told her that to begin with, bitch. The Good Witch tells Dorothy to click her heels together 3 times and then she would be home. Dorothy does as she is told, and then she's home. Wicked, the novel, takes inspiration from L. Frank Baum's novels, but the main inspiration came from the 1939 film.
Story in the first place.
I went to Beatrix Potter's farm and I thought, all right, what do we know? What do we know about the Wizard of Oz from our common memories? And I thought, well, we have the house falling on the witch. What do we know about the dead original witch? All we know about her is she has feet. So I began to think about Glinda and the Wicked Witch of the West. My memory of the film is that there's one scene in 1939 film where Billy Burke comes down and is all pink and fluffy, and Margaret Hamilton is all clawed and crabbed, and Margaret Hamilton says something like, I might have known you'd be behind this, Glinda. This was my memory. And I thought, now why is she using Glinda's first name? They've known each other. Maybe they've known each other for a long time. maybe they went to college together. And I fell down onto the ground in the Lake District laughing at the thought that they went to college together.
Prologue. The novel opens up with the witch flying on her broom and spying Dorothy walking along the yellow brick road with the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion. So she decides to dip down and go eavesdrop on the group, and she hears them all shit-talking her. Well, with the exception of Dorothy, to her credit, she's at least trying to stick up for the witch, saying she just lost her sister, because, basic human decency and all. So it starts to rain and the teen needs to find shelter. The witch doesn't have time to find shelter, so she just ducks under a tree just to wait out the storm. And while she's hanging out, she just thinks to herself that she can overcome this because she's been through a lot in her life and she still gets back up. Part 1. Munchkinlanders. So the witch is born Elphaba Throp to parents Frex and Melena Throp. At the start of our story, Melena is super duper pregnant with her first baby. Melena is the granddaughter of the eminent Throp, which is a prominent position in Munchkinland. It's an inherited position that's inherited through the female line of the family, mother to daughters.
This is as opposed to primogeniture, where the firstborn son inherits the title.
It's kind of like a medieval duchy. It's got its own political power, but it's still part of the greater Ozian hierarchy. Or like, Melena really doesn't want anything to do with this position because she's a party girl and she avoids responsibility like it's the plague, which is ironic because she's married to her husband Frex, who is a deeply conservative unionist pastor. And I have to give more background. Gregory Maguire introduces these religious practices of Oz to this novel. There's 4 main religions. Unionism, which is most akin to one of Abrahamic religions. They focus on the existence of one singular god, which they just call the unnamed god. There is also Lurlinism, which is worship of a fairy queen called Lurline, who is a prominent figure in L. Frank Baum's novel. It's more pagan-based. Those are the 2 main competing. Gregory Maguire has said unionism is much more of an urbanized religion, and then the Lurlinism is more practiced by rural folks. Then there's pleasure faith and TikTokism, religions based on spectacle and carnival and doing whatever the heck you want.
So, editing me here, I didn't really explain this concept that well, so here's an excerpt from the Wicked Wiki. In Wicked's World of Oz, pleasure faith is a hedonistic folk religion that promotes pleasure at all costs. Its believers strive to enjoy themselves in any way possible and trust that magic has the power to do anything you desire. According to author Gregory Maguire, quote, pleasure faithism is, in my mind, a kind of carnival picture of God. It puts a higher premium on spectacle. It involves the Greek idea of theater coming together for a kind of epiphany and catharsis.
TikTokism is the more extreme of the 2. It's hard to explain. So for context, Gregory Maguire explained TikTokism this way. Their allegiance is to the stimulation, to the connection, and to the appliance.
While we don't have cell phones in my Oz, there's a kind of reference for that aspect of that moment in the Industrial Revolution, which Oz seems to be going through. TikTokism is a more dangerous shifting of the devotional impulse away from the question of creations and toward the questions of utility.
Now, for this story, what you need to know about Frex and the way he practices his religion is he practices it in ways that are much more akin to fundamentalist sects of Christianity and groups. The idea of fundamentalism is that they scripture as if it's the literal word of God. Think like Bill Gothard's Institute and Basic Life Principles. Now, if you really don't know what that means, it just means he's really conservative, but you know what? He can at least brag about marrying the eminent Throp's daughter, who's like basically the hottest girl in Munchkinland, and he can just drag her all over and press her into individuality so she can be a godly wife or whatever. He's a fucking shit husband. Case in point, when we open up our story, Melena is telling him that she's probably going to be going into labor that day. From the crumpled bed, the wife said, I think today's the day. Look how low I've gone. Today, that would be like you. Perverse and inconvenient, said her husband, teasing her. The worst possible moment for my ministry, naturally. The wife yawned. There's not a lot of choice involved. From what I hear, your body gets this big and it takes over. You can't accommodate it, sweetheart. You just get it out of its way. It's on a track of its own and nothing stops it now. She pushed herself up, trying to see over the rise of her belly. I've been there. When you're so pregnant, you're like, where are my feet? I feel like a hostage to myself or to the baby. That's another thing about being that pregnant. You get so pregnant, and like towards the end, you're like, I just feel like a whale. It's not the fun part of pregnancy where you're like, oh, I'm so glowing. No, you're like, I just get this fucking thing out of me. Exert some self-control. He came to her side and helped her sit up. Think of it as a spiritual exercise, custody of the senses, bodily as well as ethical continence. Self-control? She laughed, inching towards the edge of the bed. I have no self left. I'm only a host for this parasite. Where is myself, anyway? Where'd I leave this tired old thing? Think of me. His tone had changed and he meant this. Frex, she headed off. When the volcano's ready, there's no priest in the world that can pray it quiet. What will my fellow ministers think? They'll get together and say, Brother Frexbar, did you allow your wife to deliver your first child when you had a community problem to solve? How inconsiderate of you. He thinks he's fucking hilarious. She's just trying to convince him, but he has this super duper important ministry thing that I guess he just has to attend to this minute. Yeah, okay, buddy, because the souls of however many people are just that much more important than your child being born. But whatever. Melena calls him out on his bullshit, obviously, and they argue. He leaves, and Melena needs to pee for the 100th time that morning. Frex feels guilty, so he stops and visits with some local fishermen to see if their wives can look in on Melena. I mean, sure, buddy, you could have just saved yourself a few bucks and a shit ton of grief from your wife if you just stayed there. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is so important that it's taking him away from his wife and the birth of his first child? Frex has gotten a letter from his cousin about a traveling TikTok creation thingy called the Clock of the Time Dragon. It's a huge clock with a massive TikTok dragon perched on top of it, and it's got a complete, fully mechanized puppet show. This isn't a fun little puppet show for kids. This is like the Real Housewives of Munchkinland in puppet show form, if it actually existed. Now, really, it's dramatizations of the things that people don't want to know, don't want others to know, or they're too oblivious to see themselves. This ain't no Sesame Street. Homo does not want to fuck with this shit. In his letter, Frex's cousin tells him how the clock's latest episode of The Real Housewives of Munchkinland had a married couple. It showed the husband cheating on his wife with a local widow and her daughter. Frex's cousin wants him just to show up and chase the clock out of town with righteous. It really just feels more like satanic Panic and Oz vibe. Being the good moral shit stirrer he is, Frex is like, I must drop everything to chase this clock. And of course, Melena goes into labor alone. Now, when he arrives, Frex finds the clock and its proprietor hanging around the town of Went Hardings. The mayor approaches him and is like, buddy, please don't cause any trouble. He approaches the clock, and you know what? He doesn't realize it's now time for the latest episode of The Real Housewives of Munchkinland. This episode features a minister preaching poverty and abnegation while hoarding riches on the side. And the kicker is that the puppet minister looks somewhat like Frex. Wow, what a coincidence. The townspeople aren't having it. They try to kick his ass. He does get punched in the stomach. He does manage to get away. So back at home, Melena is in labor and is in a lot of pain. She's hanging out when she hears the fishwives talking about how the local townsfolk formed an angry mob to chase Frex out of town. Upon hearing this information, Melena passes out. So the fishwives, fearing for her safety, move her to...
Wait for it.
The Clock of the Time Dragon. Just responsible for making... Yeah, because that's exactly where you want to be when you're in labor, inside the guts of a time dragon clock. I have 2 kids. With both pregnancies, I was not given the option to give birth inside a time dragon. I had 2 emergency C-sections. The time dragon clock sounds much more fun. After several hours of labor, the baby's born and there's a rainbow. And the baby's a girl. The women look at the baby and she's green and she has a full set of teeth. I did look it up. These are called natal teeth. They're rare. It's usually not a full set though. Maybe the baby doesn't really have a full set. It just looks like it, but it's just enough to cause chaos. TLDR, baby's healthy. No need to panic. It's just a little unsettling. But unfortunately for the fishwives, they don't have Googles, and one of the women sticks her finger in the baby's mouth, and the baby, being a newborn, instinctively tries to suck on her finger, but instead the baby bites down on the woman's finger, causing it to bleed, and the women freak out. They dump the baby on Melena's chest and they run away. Frex and Melena name their baby baby Elphaba after Saint Elphaba of the Waterfall, the Munchkin land saint who supposedly disappeared behind a waterfall. That's fitting. After the birth, Melena and Frex are freaking the fuck out over having a green baby, and they call for Nanny, Melena's childhood governess, to come help. Frex sucks ass, he goes to pick up Nanny from the train station or what, and he's throwing a fit, ranting about the unnamed god or whatever. Nanny is like the fucking goat of this entire series. She's like Simone Biles. Nanny takes baby Elphaba while Frex is just busy throwing a tantrum and looks the baby over, and she determines what we already knew. The baby's green, but she's perfectly healthy. Nanny tells Frex and Melena this much, and the group starts looking for explanations for Elphaba's skin color. Well, the most obvious explanation is Melena was unfaithful to her husband. Nanny suggests maybe she banged an elf. It's not outside the realm of possibility that Melena would have been unfaithful to her husband. Girlfriend loves to fuck. But Melena denies this, but she does have a vague recollection of being a traveling salesperson at her door who gave her a bottle of green elixir. I wonder who that could be. No clue. Tensions boil over, and Nanny, Frex, and Melena get into a fight. Frex hits Nanny, so she leaves early. She's like, fuck y'all, I'm done.
Several months later.
18 months later, Frex is away doing his ministry thing again, and Melena is home alone with the babe. Frex is more concerned with the souls of others than parenting or looking after his wife. Melena seems to maybe be dealing with some postpartum depression. It can't last up to that long after giving birth. It is incredibly common. I was curious, so I did some Googling, and I found a study published by the National Institutes of Health that said that symptoms can last up to 3 years after giving birth, but screenings unfortunately only go through 6 months postpartum. But there are resources if you need some. But unfortunately for Melena, she doesn't have any resources, so she turns to alcohol to cope with her problems. She won't or can't go to her husband since he's fucking useless and all, and Melena is just upset and angry. And she gets mad at poor baby Elphie because Elphie is a toddler and she throws her food on the floor. And she makes the baby cry. Girl, get used to it. You're going to have a lot more years of this kind of thing. A man comes to their gate. He's a quadling man, and the quadling people are indigenous coded people that live in the southern part of Oz. The southern part of Oz is swampy and marshy region. Think the Florida Everglades, but in Oz. He says his name is Turtleheart, and he got lost looking for someplace else. Melena immediately takes a fancy to this guy, and much to her annoyance, baby Elphie does. Girl, fucking get help, please. Melena's horny for Turtleheart, and she loves to fuck. She's Samantha Jones from Sex and the City if Samantha were married to a super fundamentalist Christian man. The first chance they get, Melena and Turtleheart decide to plop baby Elphaba into a baby swing and go have sex.
Bang! Bang! Bang!
Because you don't need to deal with your problems when you can just bang a random guy who shows up at your door.
Thank you. Bang! Bang!
So after Melena and Turtleheart have gone and fucked their brains out, Melena can go back to pretending to be a mom. Turtleheart gives little baby Elphaba a gift. So by profession, Turtleheart is an artisan glass blower, and he gives baby Elphie a little mirror that he made. Now, it's similar to the time dragon clock. It shows events to come, maybe, really. It kind of just shows whatever. Case in point, Turtleheart sees Frex coming home in the mirror, and then he tells Melena. Frex arrives home, and he's not annoyed to see some random dude in their house, let alone some random dude who's obviously banging his wife.
Thank you. Bang! Bang!
You know what? In true Frex fashion, he sees this as an opportunity to spread the gospel and convert Turtleheart to unionism.
Several days later.
Nanny comes back, and she wastes no time lecturing Melena for her parenting skills and her affair with Turtleheart. Baby Elphie isn't really talking yet, so to solve this problem, Nanny encourages Melena to take Elphie to a little playgroup with other kids her age, but Melena just sulks the whole time. She's missing her afternoon playtime with Turtleheart. Frex is a shit parent, but at least he's parenting when his daughter's around. That's the bare fucking minimum. Since Frex is doing the bare fucking minimum and he's a man, he gets praised. Even if Melena is the one staying at home with the baby all the time. The affair continues for several months, and surprise, surprise, Melena gets pregnant again. We learn this when Nanny comes for another visit. When she learns that Melena's pregnant, she asks if the baby is Frex's or Turtleheart's, and Melena's just like, In the world of obvious news, Frex and Melena are still shitty parents. One night, when the adults are just sitting around gossiping, and baby Elphaba just slips out while they're not looking when they notice. The adults freak out and they rush to find her. Nanny does not have kind words for them. She's wandered off. She's been taken, said Nanny fiercely. These two idiots were flirting like schoolgirls, and the beast from the hills is abroad. They find Elphaba, and she's just sitting near the lake, and she's safe at least. The ground sloped toward the still receded edge margin of the lake. Beneath the dock, in the dry shadows, there were eyes. Elphaba was sitting under the dock looking at the glass that Turtleheart had made. She peered and she squinted. Her open eye was distant and hollow. Reflection from the starlight off the water, hoped Frex, but he knew the bright vacant eye was not lit by starlight. Was, murmured Elphaba. Turtleheart tumbled to his knees. She sees him coming, he said thickly. She sees him to come. He is to come from the air, arriving in a balloon. From the sky, the color of a bubble of blood, huge crimson globe, a ruby globe. He falls from the sky. The region has fallen. The house of Ozma is fallen. The clock was right. A minute to judgment. Editing, there's still more context that I forgot to put in this story. The Ozmas are a royal line of queens that were ruling Oz before the wizard drops in and deposes them. At the time of this story, the current queen is called Ozma Tipitarius, and she is currently a baby. When the wizard drops in, he unceremoniously does away with her. Kind of like the princes in the tower kind of situation. There you go. The wizard has officially arrived. Ew.
Part 2, Gillikin.
16 years later, and we are in Gillikin, which is the northernmost province of Oz. We open this part of the story with Glinda, the future good witch of the north, who is actually currently being called Glinda, on a train on her way to start her first year at Shiz University. She's alone because her chaperone, Amma Cluck, stepped on a nail on the train platform and may or may not have contracted tetanus. Oh, the horrors. A nearly adult woman alone with no chaperone. Whatever shall we do? Dr. Dillamond, a goat, and a professor at Shiz, sits in Glinda's compartment. He tries to engage her in a philosophical discussion, but she kind of just brushes him off. Once she's arrived, Glinda goes to orientation with her fellow freshmen, and the staff introduces themselves. And the most notable staff member is a woman named Madame Morrible, whom Glinda thinks looks like a goldfish. Now, Glinda is supposed to have herself a private suite, but since she arrived alone, horror of all horrors, she's given a roommate. And Glinda's new roommate is one Ms. Elphaba Throp.
How dare you?
Glinda just cannot fucking let it go. She's obsessed. She clearly is intrigued by Elphaba, and she's got a little crush, but she can't admit it to herself. And what really grinds her gears is that Elphaba mostly just keeps to herself and reads.
How dare you?
Now, any chance she gets, Glinda is talking about Elphaba to her new friends. They're kind of like the Lawndale High Fashion Club from Daria. Fashion-obsessed popular girls who think that the world revolves around them. Instead of Sandy, Stacy, and Tiffany, we have Shenshen, Fanny, and Milla. This makes Glinda the queen. While they're gossiping, Fanny shares that Elphaba is great-granddaughter of the eminent Throp, which should make her loaded, but she doesn't dress like she's loaded. Or maybe she dresses so plainly for religious reasons. One night during a rainstorm, Glinda decides to talk to Elphaba. What a novel concept. So she asks her when she's reading when a storm blows the window open, and they have to work together to fix the window. And later, while they have to shove Glinda's shit back into place, they bond a little bit, and at Glinda's insistence, Elphaba tries on one of her ugly hats, so Glinda can make fun of her with the fashion club later. But it does not go well. Blows up in her face. Oh, put the damn hat on, really, said Glinda, for whom, where introspection was concerned, enough was enough. Elphaba obliged, and Glinda expected to have to bite the inside of her lip to keep from laughing. Elphaba dropped the whole sugary plate on her strange pointed head, and looked at Glinda again from underneath the broad brim. She seemed like a rare flower, her skin stem-like in its soft pearlescent sheen, the hat in a botanical riot. Oh, Miss Elphaba, said Glinda, you terrible mean thing. You're pretty. Oh, now you've lied. So go confess to the unionist minister, said Elphaba. Is there a looking glass? Of course there is. It's down the hall in the lavatory. Not there. I'm not going to be seen by those ninnies in this. Well then, decided Glinda, can you find an angle without hiding in the firelight, and you can look at your reflection in the dark window? They both gazed at the green and flowery spectre reflected in the watery old glass. Entrancing, she said. There's some strange exotic quality of beauty about you I would have never thought. Surprise, said Elphaba, and then nearly blushed. Surprise, not beauty, it's just surprise. Well, what do you know? It's not beauty. Just for funsies, I'm just going to review the book description of Elphaba. So she's described as tall, with a slender frame and sharp features, specifically her nose and chin, with high cheekbones, and she has dark hair that always looks like she had a fresh blowout, and brown eyes. There's a lot of people that would fit that description who are considered beautiful. The only reason she's not considered beautiful is that her skin is green, which, I'm sorry. Nancy Kebeda, who is the current Elphaba on Broadway, and oh my god, that girl is beautiful. I have a hard time believing that not every single person with a pulse at Shiz University isn't throwing themselves at her.
And we have to talk about our movie Elphaba Cynthia Erivo. Wicked Part 1, she went from girl next door cute, and then here in Wicked for Good, damn, she's like, hello, I'm hot, here I am, thank you, bye.
With that stupid plan bust, Glinda decides to ask Elphie what she's reading. You know, girl, maybe you could have just started with that instead of pouting. Elphie tells her that she's reading texts by early unionist writers and ministers, explaining that her dad is a unionist minister. And Glinda's confused and asks her, well, why she doesn't just ask her dad what the texts are saying, and Elphie just stares at her. The point of her reading these texts is for her to form her own opinion, not just repeat someone else's opinion, especially not her father's opinion, because if she were to ask him what he thought, she'd get his opinion. The point is for her to figure out what she believes. It's called deconstruction. So Elphie tries to engage Glinda in some philosophical discussions, especially like on the nature of good and evil, but Glinda kind of just feels embarrassed because she can't really engage with her on that level.
Later.
To make herself feel better, she shit talks Elphie with the rest of the fashion club.
Excuse me.
Like, raise your hand.
Because, of course, in addition to maybe having a crush on Elphaba, she challenges her intellectually, so she's got to bring her down a peg. Later, there's a staff student scripture reading event. Shiz University is a former religious institution. Restrictions have loosened up over the years, but they still exist.
Editing me here. Don't mind me. I look like shit right now. It's almost time for bed. Anyway, I believe Shiz's religious ties are the reason why Frex let Elphie attend Shiz in the first place.
Madame Morrible decides to read a thing called a quell, which is just a propaganda disguised as poetry. The poem she reads has very specific lines like, animals should be seen and not heard. Now, it's important that we make the distinction of what they say when they're talking about animals. Animals with a capital A are sentient creatures who can talk. And then there's animals, which is a lowercase a, and they cannot talk and they're not sentient, as far as we know. Dr. Dillamond is incensed and he goes off on Morrible saying, this is propaganda, and not even good propaganda, but shitty propaganda. And after the reading concludes, Elphie approaches Glinda trying to engage her about what they just heard, but even though Glinda isn't sitting with her fashion club girlies, she's still way too self-obsessed to respond. She's worrying that somebody's gonna see her talking to Elphaba. Stop the presses! People are talking! A boy comes up to them and introduces himself to interrupt this embarrassment of Glinda's. And he says his name is Bach. And in this hilarious little exchange, he says, I'm Bach. And Elphaba's immediate reply is, I'm leaving.
Boom. Roasted.
He recognizes Elphie as a childhood playmate, his dad being the mayor of Rush Margins, where Elphaba lived as a baby and toddler. Elphaba still doesn't really give a fuck. She just dismisses him and walks off. After this, Glinda goes back to her dorm to find Elphaba asleep, and Glinda is annoyed and she feels rejected by Elphaba, and then is annoyed for feeling rejected. Glinda huffed herself into bed with a wump, annoyed that she could feel rejected by the green girl. So a few days later, Dr. Dillamond is still incensed about the very pointed propaganda that Madame Morrible read, and he decides to interrupt his Biology 101 lecture to engage the students, but the students are fucking dense. Doesn't anyone make the connection between the expression of those thoughts and what's been going on in the Emerald City? Miss Fanny, who didn't believe she was paying tuition in order to be yelled at, snapped back at him. We don't have the tiniest notion of what's going on in the Emerald City. Stop playing games with us. If you have something to say it. Don't bleed it. Rude. So he tries again to engage them, but they still just don't fucking get it. What do you think Madame Morrible was saying when she entered that quell with the epigram, "Animals should be seen and not heard"? Asked the goat tersely. Well, anyone would be upset, said Glinda. I mean, any animal. But it's not as if your job is threatened, is it? Here you are, still teaching us. What about my children? What about my kids? Do you have kids? I didn't know you were married. The goat closed his eyes. Not married, Miss Glinda, but I might be. Or I may, perhaps, have nieces and nephews. They've already been banned effectively from studying at Shiz because they can't hold a pencil to write an essay with. How many animals have you ever seen in this paradise of education? This was true, there were none. Well, I do think it's pretty dreadful, said Glinda. Why would the Wizard of Oz do such a thing? Why, indeed, said the goat. No, really, it's a real question. I don't know. Dr. Dillamond gets frustrated, and he dismisses class early, and Glinda spies Elphie going to talk to Dr. Dillamond after class. Later, Madame Morrible is lecturing on the religious stuff when Elphaba decides to ask her about the shitty poetry she read the week before. The poem about animals should be seen and not heard. Elphie mentions that Dr. Dillamond had some concerns with the poetry, especially considering the animal bans that were happening throughout Oz. Madame Morrible just dismisses her concerns, saying, Dr. Dillamond just didn't understand because he wasn't a poet. I think he understood plenty well enough.
Several months later.
When second semester begins, Glinda goes to Madame Morrible to see about dorm reassignments, aka dumping Elphaba as a roommate, but Madame Morrible doesn't budge. She tells Glinda that unless she wants to move dorm rooms, there's going to be no reassignment, saying that it wouldn't be fair to the other girls. And Madame Morrible fucking sucks most of the time, but this is a moment where she is actually right, and I have to give credit where credit is due. Pains me to say so. So it's the end of the semester, and Bach is studying when a bunch of boys from his dorm, including Gillickney's frat boy Averick. So Averick and the other boys are trying to convince him to go out to a risque nightclub called the Philosophy Club, but Bach just declines, saying that he needs to study. And the boys still needle him, and after a while he gives in slightly and says he'll join them in an hour.
2 hours later.
Bach says, you know what, this moment he's gonna be fucking gross, and he decides he's gonna go spy on the girls changing in their dorms. He runs into Elphaba outside and they chat, and Bach lets it slip that he's got a huge crush on Glinda after meeting her the one time. Elphie lets it spill that Glinda is her roommate, and after some back and forth, she agrees to arrange a rendezvous between the two of them. So they decide to meet outside on a specified evening, and Elphie just left out the part where they were meeting with Bach. Bach chooses this moment to make his move, and Glinda just gets all hung up by the proper rules and such. They're interrupted by Amma Clutch, who I guess may or may not have tetanus. I don't know how they treat tetanus, I'm not sure. She drags the girls back into the dorm room because, you know, they're girls and virtue or whatever. Elphaba, of course, just thinks this is the funniest fucking thing ever, and I'm with her. These rules are stupid, unnecessary, and sexist, especially when we have Bach loitering outside the girls' dorm to spy on them changing. How about we just teach boys not to be gross? A couple of weeks later, Bach is hanging out with a couple of boys from his dorm room who are Crope and Tibbet, and they're like the Aussian equivalent of Turk and JD from Scrubs or Troy and Ovid from Community, but gayer. Bach and the boys run into Glinda and they share their summer plans. Glinda shares Elphaba has an internship with Dr. Dillamond, and Glinda herself is going to a lake house with the fashion club, like an Oz Hamptons kind of thing. Bach still is on campus for the summer working and such, and he and Elphaba run into each other at the dining hall. So she talked to him about her internship with Dr. Dillamond, and specifically how he's working on some scientific research to show animals and humans are biologically more similar than not. She tells Bach that Dr. Dillamond is hoping to present his findings to the wizard so that he'll finally lift his unconstitutional animal bans that are going on throughout Oz. And over the summer, Elphie, Bach, and
Troy and Ovid in the morning
bond. They hang out and they shoot the shit. And a couple weeks before school starts, Elphaba gets a letter from Glinda at the lake house. I guess she's bored as fuck and she wants Elphaba to come visit. Bach sees this as an opportunity to make another move on Glinda, so he tries to convince Elphie to go there and bring him with her. And Averick can come along as a chaperone, because I guess we have to protect the virtue of young women. Elphie resists at first, and she makes fun of Bach for having such a crush on Glinda, but she gives in after he needles her enough. They go ask Madame Morrible for permission to leave. Legally, these are adults, so I'm not sure really why they need permission to leave. Madame Morrible agrees to let them go, but only on the condition that she bring her TikTok servant bitch called Grammatic along as a chaperone. To chaperone all three of them. A TikTok robot is more of a reliable chaperone than teenage boys? Because I guess girls can't take care of themselves. I guess I'm failing to see the reasoning here. So the group leaves for the lake house, and it's the road trip from hell. Averick and Elphie act like two siblings trading back and forth jabs with each other and torturing each other. Bach is just the forgotten younger sibling sitting in the back seat while the older kids fight. And Grammatic is just a shit chaperone. He doesn't say anything like, be quiet, or keep your hands to yourself, or if you don't stop fighting, I will stop this car right now. Doesn't give them an iPad or a Game Boy to calm them down. But of course, if they gave them that, they'd still fight. It's just a creepy silent figure, and it never really bothers to stop it. After a long road trip with the children torturing each other, they arrive at the lake house, and Glinda is actually surprised to see them. But, stammered Glinda, why are you here? What's wrong? I'm here because I stupidly mentioned your invitation to Master Bach, who saw it as a sign from the unnamed god that we should come visit. But what invitation are you talking about? Asked Glinda. I don't need to show you, said Elphaba. For the first time since Bach had known her, she looked confused. Surely I don't need to bring it out. I believe I have been set up to be mortified, said Glinda, glaring at the helpless Fanny. I am being humiliated for sport. This is not funny, Miss Fanny. I have a half a mind to kick you. What is going on? Said Elphaba. Were you born to plague me? Glinda said tearfully to her roomie. Did I ask for your association? I wrote the letter, heaved Fanny between her gales of laughter. Averick began to chuckle, and Elphaba's eyes went wide and a little unfocused. You mean you didn't invite me to visit here? Said Elphaba to Glinda. Oh no, dear, I did not, said Glinda. In her anger, she was beginning to regain some control, even though Bach guessed damage had been done for good. My darling Miss Elphaba, I wouldn't have dreamed of exposing you to such thoughtless cruelties as these girls perpetrate on each other for me and the sheer amusement. Besides, you have no place in a setting like this. But I've been invited, said Elphaba. Miss Fanny, you wrote that letter instead of Miss Glinda? You ate it up! Chortled Fanny. Well, this is your house, and I accept your invitation, even if it was written under false pretenses, Elphaba said, her voice evenly matter of fact as she stared into Miss Fanny's narrowed eyes. I'll go up and unpack my bag. She strode away, only Grammatic followed. Chen Chen's out here telling Elphaba she's redeemed herself by bringing boys. I'm not really sure what Fanny's master plan was here. It just managed to piss Glinda off. And Elphaba decided to stay there to spite them all. Good for you, girl. Glinda confronts Box, and he admits that he's the one that convinced Elphie to go. Since she didn't want to come in the first place, Glinda just whines and says she's only Elphie's roomie because Madame Morrible made her. Bitch, grow up. Elphaba didn't ask to be roomed with you either. She was assigned the same as you. The only difference is she's not whining about it. And while Glinda's throwing a temper tantrum like a 4-year-old when you take away their favorite toy, Bach kisses her. The next day, Elphaba, Glinda, and Bach, accompanied by creepy Grammatic bitch thingy, go back to Shiz. Averick chooses to stay behind with the girls to get laid, I guess. In true Glinda fashion, she pouts about it for some time after that. Bach is still daydreaming about the kiss he had with Glinda. When he sees Elphaba again, he tries to pump her for more information, but she really just tells him, forget it, move on. Right before school starts for the year, Bach and Averick are hanging out when they spy Elphaba, Glinda, and the fashion club girlies huddled at the entrance of their dorm, crying. Averick asks them what's wrong, and they find out quickly it's Dr. Dillamond. He's dead and he had his throat slit. So Glinda starts to tell them what happened. The night before, Elphie and Glinda were in bed, and in the middle of the night, Amma Clutch noticed lights on outside, and she got up to check them out, and she woke the girls up. So she looked out the window and said, "That's funny," and Elphie asked her what was funny, but Amma Clutch just left without answering. The next morning, Amma Clutch didn't show up with the morning tea, but the girls don't think much of it. But then she missed breakfast, and then Dr. Dillamond didn't show up for class. But we don't really learn much more aside from that, other than Amma Clutch has experienced a nervous breakdown, is now being held in the infirmary. We still don't really know what happened to Dr. Dillamond. About 3 weeks later, Madame Morrible tells Glinda that since she doesn't have any chaperone, that she and Elphie are going demoted to the common dorm. And Glinda is so intimidated by Madame Morrible that she is ready to accept her fate. But luckily for Glinda, Elphie steps up and advocates for the both of them, and she proposes a solution to Madame Morrible. Morrible agrees to let them keep their dorm room on the condition that Nanny come to chaperone young women's virtue and all, which means that Elphaba's younger sister, Nessa, would arrive a year early. Glinda is now going by
Glinda.
in the wake of Dr. Dillamond's death, because the first time they met each other, he mispronounced her name, saying Glinda instead of Galinda. Bach decides he doesn't have a crush on Glinda anymore, since now she is Glinda instead of Galinda. Oh no, she'll be so disappointed! Bach is put up to greeting Nanny and Nessa at the train station. This is where we learn that Nessa was born without arms. There's been allusions throughout the text about her being disabled, mostly really offensive things. Madame Morrible is saying she's disfigured. She's also extremely religious. And Elphie and Glinda actually bond for real this time. Elphie shares about her childhood, sharing her experience as a missionary kid, when her father dragged them all over Oz, Florida to spread the message. Her mother died giving birth to their little brother, Shell. After Melena's death, Frex, who has no parenting abilities, relied on Nanny and Elphaba to take care of the two younger kids. This is called parentification. It happens when a child is expected to take on responsibilities beyond their developmental age. It's often practical, like with a kid having to take on household tasks that should be an adult's job, cleaning the whole house, watching the kids all the damn time. Or it can be emotional, like when a parent leans on their kid as their confidant, not as a parent. It's not just you might babysit your brother once in a while, or it's all the time. Also, Frex is a useless moron. That's why Nessa's at Shiz early. And Nessa is Frex's clear favorite, probably due to her religious fanaticism. Then there's Shell, who's their younger brother, who's just a fucking juvenile delinquent. And at Shiz, much to Elphaba's annoyance, Nessa tries to evangelize fucking everybody. Elphie already had to bring her sister there early so that Nanny could come, and now she's trying to convert all their friends. As if having your sister trying to convert all your friends isn't embarrassing enough. Now, Elphie's responsible for her sister's well-being, even with Nanny there. Now, before we continue, Glinda, we need to have a serious talk. Please remember what your friend Elphaba has done for you here. She gave up her own comfort and sanity so that you could keep your private room. Please remember this. The semester gets underway, and Bach and Elphaba have a new biology, actually it's called life sciences professor. His name is Dr. Nick Dick. To me, he just sounds like how all the adults in Charlie Brown sound. Also, Jesus fucking Christ, they replaced Dr. Dillamond quickly. Did they even vet this guy? They read his credentials? No? Okay, Bach and Elphaba aren't crazy about him. They discuss Dr. Dillamond's death, conclude that his death was sus, and they think he was probably killed to keep something secret or possibly to shut him up. Bach has suspicion what's been going on in the Emerald City, and he wants to get to the bottom of it. He tells Elphie that they should work together. Elphie declines, telling Bach that he has too much to lose and she's just going to figure it out on her own. While Dr. Nick Dick is making his Charlie Brown noises at the class, a new student slips in, obviously late, and the poor boy is trying to slip in without drawing attention to himself, but Dr. Nick Dick sees and makes a rude remark about his lateness. Bro, maybe he tried to get in another way, but you maybe locked the fucking front door, and so he had to get in the side door. He wasn't being disrupted to be a dick, but you're sure as hell making him feel like one. The new kid is from the Vincas, which is the mountainous area in the western part of Oz. It's basically just Colorado. If Colorado didn't have overpriced ski resorts and legal weed, he stands out because he's dressed in all his cultural garb and he's got blue diamonds tattooed on his skin. Bach chooses this moment to loudly tell Elphie, "Look, a Winky!" Way to make the new kid feel welcome, Bach, by spouting racial slurs. Editor's note. In Baum's original novels and in the Wicked musical and movies, the term Winky is just a term for people living in the western part of Oz. However, in the universe of the book, the term Winky is used as a slur. Gregory Maguire reframes this word to show how the language that we use can in fact carry a bias. A word that sounds harmless to one group may hold harmful meaning for another. Bach uses this term colloquially, not realizing it's a slur. Similar to someone using the G word to describe a person of Romani heritage without understanding the loaded history behind that word. Back to the story. Dr. Nick Dick is pretending to teach. He takes a bottle of magic dust out and he calls it like Essence of Life or some stupid cheap perfume bottle name or whatever. A pair of antlers on the wall start moving around on their own. Then they spin off and pin the poor new kid to the wall. And poor new kid is understandably frightened and upset. Oz, Troy, and Abed get up to help him, and pandemonium breaks out and the other kids just start goofing off. At the next class, the new kid makes it a point to arrive early and choose the seat farthest from the inciting antlers, not wanting to draw attention to himself. And we learn that Bach has the tea on the newbie. His name is Fiyero, and he's our Arjiki prince. Think of the Arjikis as the Ozian equivalent of the Romani people. And Bach continues to be a dumbass and says, "I wonder what he thinks about civilization." First off, just because his culture doesn't look exactly like yours doesn't mean he's not civilized. Second,
Shut the fuck up.
now, Averick, being the charming guy that he is, makes a nasty remark about Fiyero's diamond tattoos and then follows it up with an even more racist comment about the color of his skin, saying it's the color of shit. Now, for accuracy, Fiyero is described as having rich ochre-colored skin. Elphie, being awesome, claps back at him and says, "What a thing to say. If you ask me, that's a shitty opinion."
Boom. Roasted.
Now, in this class, Dr. Nick Dick takes it upon himself to commit animal abuse in front of his students. He has a little baby lion cub in a cage at the front of the class, and of course the lion cub is scared because it's just a tiny baby, and Dr. Nick Dick is an asshole. His lesson is that animals are second-class citizens. It's fucking eugenics, and Elphaba is incensed, and she stands up to give Dick Dick a piece of her mind, and the boys are annoyed. They think she's a loudmouth, which is fucking bullshit, because if she were a guy, they'd be groveling at her feet. Because she's a woman, they get fucking irritated. On the plus side, it distracts Nick Dick long enough so that the students can rescue the lion. The gang officially meets Fiyero when Crow, Oz Abed, introduces him to the gang, making Oz Troy, Tippet, jealous.
My emotion!
But there's no need to be jealous. Fiyero explains that he's married, sort of. He's been betrothed to a girl back home since he was like in 4th grade. This makes the gang uncomfortable, so of course they start acting like little kids, especially Elphie and Averick, who just torment each other. But you know what? At least Oz, Troy, and Abed get to see their coupledom live for another day.
Troy and Abed in the morning.
One day, Madame Morrible is handing out the mail. Everyone fucking hates her because she's uber creepy, but unfortunately this is one of those rare times where the gang is forced to interact with her. Now, because Nessa is his favorite, dear old Frex has sent her a pair of handmade silver Ozian Manolo Blahniks as a gift, and
None for Gretchen Wieners, bye.
bravo, Frex. Elphie, Nessa, and Glinda and co do all the fun college kids things. They stay out and late, and then they get drunk off Gatorade and vodka in their dorm room. Maybe it's not the dorm room, it's more like the common areas, because, you know, propriety and all that. They sing songs, and Elphie is an incredibly talented singer. Really, is there anything this bitch can't do? And we learn a little bit more about Fiyero. He shares his future bride is a girl from a neighboring Vincas village, and they'll officially take up at the age of 20. This means the marriage is politically motivated. The best way I can explain it is, before the days of the internet and democracy, kings and queens would arrange marriages for their kids for political reasons, like to form alliances and shit.
Later.
So after being sick for 100 years, Amma Clutch finally dies. Elphie goes with Glinda to visit her one last time before she passes. And while they're there, they try to get her to tell them who killed Dr. Dillamond. She just keeps giving them vague answers like, you already know that, and it wasn't Grammatic. That's the last word on the subject before Amma Clutch passes away, unfortunately. They hold an extremely modest funeral.
Troy and Abed are in mourning.
And afterwards, Madame Morrible steers the gang into her private parlor for tea. Glinda says she wants cream for her tea, and Madame Morrible goes off on her, calling her ignorant, and says, if only people would obey the wizard absolutely, there would be an abundance. Yeah, okay, definitely not creepy and fascist at all. She dismisses the group from her quarters, but she makes Nessa, Elphie, and Glinda stay behind. She dismisses Nanny, but Nanny refuses to leave Nessa, but Morrible insists. She also dismisses her creepy as fuck grammatic bitch servant, telling it to go lubricate yourself in a closet somewhere. So once they're alone, Madame Morrible talks at the girls, trying to suss out what they know about Dr. Dillamond's death. She wants to know what Nanny and or Amma Clutch might have told them. Glinda tells her that Clutch never really told her much of anything, and Madame Morrible is relieved. So she starts filling them in about the details about Dr. Dillamond's death. She says she was up early the night of his death. She just happened to see Dr. Dillamond's light on, so she sent her grammatic bitch to check on him, to be nice.
Sure, Jan.
But shocker, Grammatic found Dr. Dillamond with his throat slit and tries to say he did it to himself. Madame Morrible blames that Grammatic was just checking Dr. Dillamond's pulse when Amma Clutch happened to arrive and see blood spurting everywhere.
Really? Yeah, I'm not buying it.
How do you know all this, lady? If I didn't know any better, I'd think you were full of shit. Oh wait, that's exactly what I think. After she tells this fascinating little story, Madame Morrible decides that this is the best time to rope the girls into a MLM of fascism starring the wizard. For internal security reasons, Madame Morrible puts a spell on the girls so that they won't remember this stupid MLM fascist pitch. Internal security, my ass. Her pitch consists of the following. Deifying the wizard so hard it's embarrassing by saying how the Ozmas were just useless and the wizard is so put upon it's up to him to put it all back together. And she insults the girls and the citizens of the nations surrounding Oz. She makes some predictions about the girls and then demands all an MLM but with fascism. Morrible goes to unhypnotize them, but before she does, she warns the girls that they'll get migraines if they try to remember what happened. But before Madame Morrible can finish the process of unhypnotizing them, Elphie ships her foot and knocks over a cup. That tiny little accident probably was enough to partially break for the spell, which means luckily Elphaba isn't Madame Morrible's bitch. Can't say the same for the other two.
20 minutes later.
The girls decide to have a quick drink before heading to the bar to join the boys in the fashion club when Glinda tries to remember what happened in Madame Morrible's office. Glinda found that the binding spell cut closer than she had understood. It wasn't merely that they couldn't talk about it. Already she had begun to lose the words, to falter in her thinking, to fail to commit the interview to memory. There was a proposal. It was a proposal, wasn't it? Of some questionable proposition. Was it? The civil service? Doing some ballroom dancing? Or was it not a proposal, but a prophecy? A little friendly encouragement about the future? And she'd been alone. The others hadn't been listening. Madame Morrible had spoken directly to her. A lovely testimony to Glinda's potential. The chance to rise. Nessarose said, "Catch her, I can't, and she sagged against Nanny's bosom, and Glinda swooned, and at the same moment Elphaba thrust out strong arms and scooped Glinda in mid-collapse. Glinda didn't really lose consciousness, but the uncomfortable physical nearness of hawk-faced Elphaba, after that undesired act of desire, made her want to shiver with revulsion and to purr at the same time. "Steady, girl, not here," said Elphaba. "Resist, come on." Resist was just what Glinda didn't want to do, but after all, in the shadow of an apple cart, on the edge of a market, well, this was hardly the place. Tough skin, said Elphaba, appearing to pull words from the back of the throat. Come on, Glinda. You've got better brains. Come on. I love you too much. Snap out of it, you idiot. Well, really, she said as Elphaba dumped her on a heap of moldy packing straw. No need to be so romantic about it. Girl, that was your move. Ask her out. You could have made a move, but you didn't. So they finally reached the bar where the boys in the fashion club are hanging out when Averick proposes that they all go clubbing at the philosophy club, as it is très risque.
It's gonna be legend. Wait for it. Dairy.
Elphie declines. She thinks some shit stinks in the Emerald City, and she ropes Glinda into going to investigate. While the boys in the fashion club go to the philosophy club for some risque fun, Glinda and Elphie hitch a ride to the Emerald City to do some sleuthing. Now, the philosophy club is indeed très risque. The boys immediately get their delicate little virgin sensibilities upset. There's like weird, vaguely sexual stuff, something involving a tiger and poor Tibbet. That's all I'll say without giving details. Meanwhile, Elphie and Glinda have caught the cheapest and slowest ride to the Emerald City ever. It takes like 100 fucking years. Now, during the nights, the girls share a bed and snuggle up together for warmth and protection, according to Glinda.
Sure, Jan.
Girl, your closet is a walk-in closet in the goddamn basement. After traveling for a bajillion and 1 years, they finally make it to the Emerald City. Unlike the musical and the movie, there's no whimsy and zero fun. Instead, it's self-serious, heavily militarized, and poverty and homelessness are rampant. Elphie notices that there isn't an animal citizen in sight, so they finally make it to the wizard's palace, and initially they're denied entry. However, they manage to get in by buttering up the staff for several days before they weasel their way in. But before they proceed, the staff has to lay down a set of ground rules that the girls must abide by while meeting with the wizard. Rule number 1, they have 4 minutes with the wizard. Rule number 2, don't approach until commanded to do so. Rule number 3, don't speak until spoken to. And rule number 4, the wizard must be addressed as Your Highness. Now, Elphie starts to make the comment that the last part sounds awful regal, and Glinda just nudges her to stop. I thought the royalty had been... Glinda elbowed Elphaba to make her shut up. Elphaba had no common sense sometimes. They hadn't come this far just to be turned away because of adolescent radicalism. Again, if Elphie were a guy, I don't think that Glinda would be so offended, but, because she's a woman cannot have opinions. They go into the wizard's chambers, which are far more complex and ornate than they need to be. Yeah, great use of tax dollars, my guy. So they reach the throne room, but the wizard isn't there. And he has yet to make an appearance when suddenly there's a faux rainstorm and then a skeletal figure just appears in front of them and it introduces itself as Oz the Great and Terrible. It asks the girls who they are, and Elphie, who is petrified of the rain, just won't respond. And Glinda is annoyed, and she responds and tells the wizard their names. And Elphie finally speaks up and tells the wizard that they're Madame Morrible's students and they've come with information. The wizard, this means that they have gossip to share, and Elphie says gossip is unreliable, and the wizard says,
Gossip's worth its weight in gold.
Oops, wrong musical. Elphie explains that they're there to give the wizard Dr. Dillamond's research in hopes that it will end his genocidal policies, but, the wizard just dismisses her. Elphie tries to argue her points, but the wizard is just a piece of fucking shit masquerading with a skeleton hologram instead of showing his fucking face. After some back and forth discussion, the wizard asks the girls why Madame Morrible sent them, and Elphie says she didn't, as if they were just there for letters of recommendation for grad school or whatever. The piece of shit wizard just asks them what their plans are after they graduate. Glinda assumes that she'll go home and get married, and Elphaba doesn't provide an answer. It's none of his fucking business. He recites some Ozian scripture and then unceremoniously dismisses them. Later, Glinda's back at the ride and waiting for Elphaba when someone tries to take the sheet she saved for her. My sister, she lied. I am saving this seat for my sister. And how I have changed, she thought, in a year and some, from despising the colored girl to claiming we are blood. So university life does change you in ways you cannot guess. Elphie finally arrives, and Glinda's happy to see her, but Elphie's only brought enough food for one person. Elphaba tossed a couple of oranges, a hunk of unrepentant cheese, and a loaf of bread that filled the compartment with a pungent staleness. "This'll have to do until you stop this evening," she said. "Me? Me?" said Glinda. "What do you mean, me? Have you got better things to eat for yourself?" "Something worse, I expect," said Elphaba. "But what needs to be done? I've come to say goodbye. I'm not going back with you to Credge Hall. I'll find a place to study on my own. I'll not be a part of Madame Morrible's school again." "No, no," cried Glinda. "I can't let you. Nanny will eat me alive. Nessarose will die. Madame Morrible will. Elphie, no! Tell them I kidnapped you and made you come here." "They'll believe that of me," said Elphaba. She stood on the mounting tread. A Gillikin female dwarf, having caught the gist of the drama, shifted into the more comfortable seat next to Glinda. "They needn't look for me, Glinda. I'm not going to be findable. I'm going down." "Down where? Back to Quadling country?" "That would be telling," Elphaba said, "but I won't lie to you." "My dear, no need to lie. I don't know where I'm going. I haven't yet decided, so I wouldn't lie." "Elphie, get in this cab! Don't be a fool!" cried Glinda. "You'll be all right," Elphaba said. "You're now a seasoned traveler. This is just the return leg of a voyage you already know." She put her face against Glinda's and kissed her. "Hold out if you can," she murmured, and kissed her gown. "Hold out, my sweet." Glinda craned her head to see Elphaba drift back into the crowds. For all her singularity of complexion, it was astounding how quickly she became camouflaged in the ragamuffin variety of street life in the Emerald City. Or maybe it was the foolish tears blurring Glinda's vision. Elphaba hadn't cried, of course. Her head turned away as quickly as she stepped down, not to hide her tears, but to soften the fact of their absence. But the sting to Glinda. So after that, we learned that Elphaba's great-grandfather hired the Aussie version of a private detective to try and find her, and Nessa was devastated and turned inward, falling deeper into her religious fundamentalism and driving away the rest of her friends. Go to part 3, the City of Emerald. It's 5 years later, and Fiyero, the new kid to the group, and the last part is in Emerald City on princely business. He's on his way to a meeting with a colleague at the opera when he stops into a chapel. There he runs into one Ms. Elphaba Throp. He tries to engage with her, but she pretends she doesn't know who he is, and after some back and forth, she agrees to meet him outside in an hour. So Fiyero chooses to stand up his business colleague and chooses to meet Elphaba instead, and she tries to give him this. He spies her outside and follows her home. Again, then he calls her to her, and she catches up to her just as Elphaba looks up, and then she remembers that she's not supposed to know who he is, and he managed to catch up to her before she shuts the door, and he jams his shoulder in the door to keep her from slamming it on his face. And there's some awkward pleading, but Elphie lets Fiyero inside her apartment. It's actually quite funny. His foot was blocking the door before she could slam the heavy door shut. "Are you in trouble?" he asked. "Leave me alone," she said. "Please, please. You're in trouble. Let me in." "You're in trouble. Stay out." Pure Elphaba. His last doubts fled. He cracked the door open with his shoulder. "You're making me into a monster," he said, grunting with the effort. She was strong. "I'm not going to rob you or rape you. I won't be ignored like that." "Why?" She gave up then, and he fell stupidly against the unplastered brick wall of the stairwell like a prat-falling twit in a vaudeville hour. "I remembered you as full of delicacy and grace," she said. "Did you catch something by accident, or did you study awkwardness?"
Boom. Roasted.
He collects himself and he responds, "Come on," he said. "You force someone to behave like a clumping boar, and you give them no choice. Don't be so surprised. I can still manage grace. I can do delicacy."
Watch yourself.
Watch yourself!
So they go up to her apartment and they sit down, and she has a white cat named Malky, and Fiyero teases her by telling her that the cat is her familiar. Ha 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 ha, so funny. Elphie asks Fiyero about his wife. He's married to his betrothed Sarima, and they have 3 young kids. Elphie doesn't really volunteer any information about herself, but after a bit of an awkward silence, she finally tells him what happened. After Dr. Dillamond's death, she felt like no one really cared, so she went under. She steers the conversation away from herself by asking about Glinda, and he tells her she's married to some uber-rich dude. The guy's Definitely not her beard, because she's definitely not still hung up on Elphie. So Fiyero manages to get out of her that she's gone underground with like a radical group that's kind of like the Black Hand pre-World War I, but for the liberation of animals instead of Serbia. After a bit, he leaves, but he doesn't stay gone for long. He convinces her to let him come back. They have dinner, and at Elphie's face, and Broseph has his stinky fucking feet on her goddamn table, and I'm screaming into the void, take your fucking nasty feet off the table, dude. So during dinner, she asks him about Bach, and he tells her that he married one of the fashion club members, Milla. Elphie asks about Glinda again, and again he says what he knows. She asks about Averick, wondering if he's still a smug bastard. Of course he is. What kind of stupid question is that? There's some sexual tension simmering as Elphie tells him about how she found his sapphire diamond tattoos beautiful. I remember the first time I saw you, she said. It was in that lecture hall of what's his name? Dr. Nick Dick, said Fiyero. He blushed. You had those beautiful markings on your face. I'd never seen such before. Did you plan that entrance to win your way into our hearts? He makes a mental note to, wear his shirt a little more open next time they see each other so she can see where his diamonds go all the way down. So the next time Elphie and Fiyero hang out, she asks him if he plans on spending the rest of the season in the city. He explains to her that he sent word to his wife that his business would keep him there indefinitely. His business, by the way, are trade agreements. They're super detailed. Got to trade. What's he trading? I don't know. Stuff. Maybe it's Elphaba's panties. Super duper official, okay? Who's asking? According to him, Sarima doesn't care what he does, since she's married into the family, and she's afforded the same wealth and privileges he has, so she doesn't know he's home or not. Yeah, rude. He mentions to Elphie about how now Sarima is going fat after her third child. His words, not mine. Yeah, dude, seriously, give the woman a break. She had 3 kids right in a row, and childbirth and pregnancy are really hard on your body. That's putting it mildly. He bitches to Elphie about how Sarima's 5 sisters have all moved into his house, and he compares them to a harem. So nice. Fiyero lets it slip that once or twice Sarima might have proposed that one of her sisters take care of his energies at nighttime. Not that she's tired from having 3 children in like 3 years. Elphie's shocked to hear it, but Fiyero gets all defensive and he says, it's not all that taboo. And the great Kels. Yeah, Broseph, just because something is not that taboo doesn't mean it's not taboo. It's like saying that because something is not that uncommon means it must be common. It's still not common. Is an unreliable narrator. If we flip the retelling of this story from Sarima's point of view, we get a very different picture. She's a woman that has had 3 kids in 3 years. At this point, it's safe to say that all her kids are 5 and under at least. Needless to say, she is very tired. As I've stated before, childbirth and pregnancy are not easy on your body, no matter what certain uneducated morons in Congress might claim, or despite what TV and movies might have you believe. Your body doesn't just bounce back like that. So let's go over this again. Sarima is a woman that has had back-to-back pregnancies in 3 years, has a household of very young kids, girly pop, is just happy to have 5 minutes to herself without anybody bothering her. For Sarima, sex is probably the last thing on her mind. Mild spoilers, later in the story we see Sarima would absolutely not be fine with her husband sleeping with another woman, let alone one of her sisters. I think it's possible that she might have said something flip or sarcastic in the moment without really realizing it, or one of her sisters made a move on Fiyero behind Sarima's back, and they used that as an excuse. What Fiyero is now doing is he's using this rationalization to justify his behavior. At this point in the story, Fiyero has already abandoned his responsibilities at home to spend all his time with Elphaba. He's being emotionally unfaithful to his wife before anything physical actually happens. This is why I think the not that taboo comment is the rationalization to let himself off the hook before he crosses that line further. So Elphie can't help herself, and she asks Fiyero if he ever slept with his sisters-in-law. I can't help it. Did you do it? Did I do it? He was teasing her. Did you sleep with your sisters-in-law? No, he said, not out of lofty moral standards or a lack of interest either. It's just that Sarima is a shrewd wife, and everything in marriage is a campaign. I would have been in her thrall even more than I am. Such a bad thing? You're not married. You don't know. I am married, she said, just not to a man. Now Elphie starts crying, and she goes to retrieve a blanket to dab her tears. Fiyero goes to comfort her, and the sexual tension just starts to erupt as he puts his arm around her to comfort her. He raised his eyebrows. She put her hands to her face. He'd never seen her look like that. Her words had shocked herself. She had to turn her head away for an instant. Oh, damn. Tears. They burned like fire. She cried, and suddenly, in a fury, she ran for an old blanket to dab her tears before the salty wetness could run down her cheeks. She stood bent over like an old woman, one arm on the counter, the blanket falling from her face to the floor. Elphie, Elphie, he said, horrified, and lurched after her, and put his arms around her. The blanket hung between them, chin to ankles, but seemed to burst into flames itself, or roses, or a fountain of champagne, or an incense. Odd how the richest image blooms in the mind when the body itself is most alert. No, 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 she cried. No, no, I'm not a harem. I'm not a woman. I'm not a person. No. But her arms wheeled of their own accord, like windmill sails, or like those magic antlers, not to kill him, but to pin him with love, to mount him against the wall. So she pins him to the wall, and they start making out, and just like that, they are now banging.
Bang, bang, bangity bang, I said bang, bang, bangity bang, bang.
Now, their affair is mostly on Elphie's terms. They meet at her place and only at night, and she has clear physical boundaries. Fiyero, being a gentleman, abides by her terms. That is what we call enthusiastic consent. We love to see it. When he's not with Elphaba, he doesn't really have much to do but sit and daydream about her and slack on his princely duties. Other than that, he buys gifts for Elphie, and then he gifts for Sarima and the kids because he feels guilty. He tries to meet up with some old college buddies, including Averick, but Averick is a pig. Surprise, surprise. The affair is intense, and it goes on for months. Elphie and Fiyero are like doing Simone Biles level floor routines in bed every night, and when they're together, Fiyero's just pawing at her the whole time, and he's so whipped. He's writing their names together in spilled flour like a teenager writing your crush's names on a trapper keeper. So Fiyero plus Faye, Faye, Heart, Fiyero, Fiyero plus Faye forever. Okay, so it's obviously just the first one. The other ones I made up, I just thought they were funny. Now, when he's not with Elphaba, he doesn't really have much to do but sit and daydream about her and slack on his princely duties. Other than that, he buys gifts for Elphie, and then he buys gifts for Sarima and the kids because he feels guilty. He tries to meet up with some old college buddies, including Averick, but Averick is a pig. Surprise, surprise. Now, one night he gets up to pee, and he comes back and he decides to moon over Elphaba while sleeping, and she wakes up for a second and she calls him Yero, my hero. They are cute, but they do argue quite a bit, and he argues with her mostly about what she does, about whether or not it's moral. I think it's kind of irrelevant if the act is being protested is literal genocide and eugenics. The wizard's whole fucking regime is based on terrorism, so I think it's safe to say he's not giving the citizens of Oz any legitimate outlets to redress their grievances or make any real changes. And since the system is super fucked, the people have no choice but to engage in more extreme ways to change the system. Fiyero finally gets it when he sees some animals and a group of quadlings getting harangued outside a coffee shop by the Gale Force. Harangued is too tame of a word. The quadlings and bears were fucking bludgeoned. The coffee shop owner doesn't really just give a fuck. He just closes the curtains while this thing is going on and just dismisses it. And the guy says some super racist and classist things about them because he thinks Fiyero wouldn't mind, which Fiyero lets him know, oh yes, I do fucking mind. He doesn't tell Elphie what he saw. So the next morning, Elphie tells Fiyero that she's going to be busy for 2 weeks, and he is none too thrilled about this. But there's some kinky oil play that is involved, and he forgets about it, of course. In the middle of their sexy time, he asks her what the goal of Worldbuilding is, and she tells them to kill the wizard. And course, while they're doing it, Elphie just says that Fiyero could be a super secret spy. He just says, I'm not, I'm good. And they keep having sex. So let's be real, like, Fiyero would be a shit spy. I mean, he's so busy in Elphaba's bed every night, he can't handle his
Business.
And since he has nothing to do for a couple weeks while Elphie's doing her thing, he goes shopping, and while he is shopping, he has some naughty daydreams about her. He almost has an embarrassing incident in one of the shops when he runs into Glinda and Oz Abed.
Cool.
Sans Oz Troy. Maybe they broke up.
My emotions! My emotions!
So Glinda sees him and she drags him out to tea with Oz Abed, and while they're having tea, she asks him if his wife and kids are with him, and he says no, they're back in Kiamo Klo, which Glinda instantly clocks him as having an affair, and she tries to get him to spill the tea and asking her who it's with and anybody we know, but he dodges her question by changing the subject. So at tea they talk more about stuff. He asks her if she has any kids with her weird husband. She says no. I guess the guy's really old. Yeah, he's definitely not her beard or anything. She brings up Elphaba because of course she does. She was definitely not waiting for the chance to bring her up. She asks Fiyero what he hears from Elphaba, and he says, well, that's a name that I don't hear every day. Did she ever turn up? Surely Nessarose must have said, smooth, buddy, you're definitely not giving yourself away there. You definitely don't have Elphie and I are secretly banging written all over your forehead. Glinda responds, Nessarose says that if her sister ever does turn up, she'll spit in her face. Glinda remarks, so we all must pray that Nessarose never loses her faith, for that would mean the evaporation of such tolerance and kindness. I think she would kill Elphaba. Nessa was abandoned to look after her crazy father, her grandfather thingy, that brother and that nurse in that house. Yeah, so I guess now that Nessa has to take on some responsibilities, Elphie's abandoned her? I'm sorry, give the woman a break. Let's not forget the fact that Elphaba basically took care of everyone and their dog their whole life. Let Frex, Shell, Nanny, and Nessa take care of their own selves for once. Crope said that he thought he saw Elphaba during a rainstorm once wrestling with the umbrellas. Glinda makes a comment about how Elphie was allergic to water and says, I never knew how she kept herself so clean, and I was her roommate. And Fiyero forgets himself for a second and blurts out, oil, I think. He realizes that he outed himself once Glinda and Crope stopped their conversation to look at him. Because how would you know that, my guy? Dare to explain? So he recovers by saying that in the Vinkus, the nomadic tribeswomen would sometimes use oil to cleanse themselves when there was no access to water. Dude, you are a shitty-ass liar. After some
This was great. I'll give you a call. We should do it again sometime.
Oz Abed splits and Glinda takes Fiyero's arm to hold him back. It's time for a serious talk. She knows something's up and she tells him as much. Something's going on in your life. I'm not as dumb as I act. Something good and bad at the same time. Maybe I can help. He blows her off. You were always so sweet, he said, and how I regret that I won't meet Sir Chuffrey. But Glinda gets the last word in. If you should see her, said Glinda lightly, tell her I miss her still. Now, the 2 weeks have finally passed. Fiyero has some serious blue balls and he's dying to get some booty. So after their reunion, Fiyero and Elphie are having some pillow talk post-sexy time when she tells him that she should probably get out of time for Wickedness, aka Oz Christmas. She's got a super big production with her group happening that day, and Fiyero is just having none of this. It's Lurlin Miss Eve. I'm not going to spend the holidays in a bathtub all alone. Well, hire some company. See if I care. Just stay away from anything social. I mean theater or crowds or even restaurants. Please, will you promise me that? If you could be more specific, I could be more careful. You could be most careful if you left town completely. Bro, you're the one who's been hanging around the Emerald City so that you can bang Elphaba every night at the expense of your family. But whatever. Why should I keep myself so safe? He asked her. But he was almost asking himself, is there anything in my life worth preserving with a good wife back there in the mountains, serviceable as an old spoon, drying the heart from having been scared of marriage since she was 6? With 3 children so shy of their father, the Prince of the Archikis, that they will hardly come near him, with a careworn clan moving there, going through the same motion, to the same disputes, herding the same herds, praying the same prayers as they'd done for 500 years, and me with a shallow, undirected mind, no artfulness in word or habit or special kindness toward the world. What is there that makes my life worth preserving? I love you, said Elphaba. So that's that then, and that's it, he answered her, and himself. And I love you, so I promise to be careful. The matter is definitely not settled. He decides to go follow her to her big production, and it's outside of a theater. That's where the wizard is supposed to be. He maybe appears outside, but instead Madame Morrible appears unexpectedly, and there's a bunch of kids there who were attending the play. Elphaba freezes up. After that, Fiyero loses sight of her in the crowd. But for Fiyero, the matter is definitely not settled, so he decides to follow her to her big production outside of a theater, where I guess the wizard is possibly there. Then he possibly appears outside, but then Madame Morrible appears unexpectedly with a bunch of kids who are attending the play, and Elphaba freezes. After that, Fiyero loses sight of her in the crowd, and he heads back to her place. But before Elphaba can get home, he's intercepted by a group of cloaked assassins who proceed to beat the shit out of him until he's down on the ground, seeing blood pouring from his headwards. So later at the convent of St. Glinda's, a newbie monk, basically the Aussian version of a nun, goes outside and finds Elphaba crouching down in the snow with blood on her hands. And at first, the newbie thinks that Elphaba's hurt herself, but when she goes to check her out, there's no runes on her wrist. Elphaba is completely distraught, and she will not say more beyond a couple words, and newbie doesn't really know what's wrong. The convent, which is technically called a montery, is supposed to be a refuge, a safe place, some place where people can go for help, but this institution is ridiculously incompetent. Case in point, instead of helping her, newbie cares more about doing Oz Christmassy sort of thing. So she plops Elphaba on a chair with a blanket and goes off to party. Like, hello, don't help her. It's not like this woman is clearly in crisis. Since Oz doesn't have cell phones or crisis hotlines, Elphie is unfortunately stuck trying to get assistance from this lazy ass bitch. Help the person who came to you in crisis, for fuck's sake! And it's at that a creepy and mysterious as fuck crone called Yackle shows up and tries to comfort Elphaba, but she's unresponsive. This concludes part 1 of my Wicked video. As you can see, there is so much to this book, and I really just did not have the time or energy to really delve into all that there was here. So I'm splitting this video into 2 parts. I will have the next part out shortly. Please stick around. I know I've worn like 6 different shirts, but look, I filmed this over like several days. It's probably a couple weeks now, so hopefully we're gonna get this out soon.